this session is actually titled Designing Content Types, which might induce various things in your heads. If you are a designer, as in graphics, pixel pushing designer, you might think about, oh yeah, finally, that's the the talk that tells me when exactly to use the content editable view helper or whatever. Or even though that might actually be more the implementer view. If you are more the I'm the editor in the company kind of person, you might think, well, designing content types, I don't know, what's that? What has design to do with my content? It's always the designers that break my content because they hide the meaning of the things that I want to express behind fancy buttons that are seemingly more important than what I actually have to say. Oh yeah, now we have something. So the thing is, we will look at this from a few perspectives. So first of all, that's me, or well, that's me, and that's a bit more about me. I've been around here in this community for ages, actually. Before Neos and Flow started to exist, I was already part of it, kind of, which is cool. Feels really good. That's the company I currently work at. I co-founded it. You've seen that a few times, I guess. What I would like to know a little bit is, who are you? I mean, you are probably all using Neos, or at least want to do it. But who of you is, let's say, developer? So HTML, PHP, YAML files. How many would that be? Okay. And who of you would be more the content creation side, writing, planning? Toby. Okay, so maybe we can just, I don't know. Okay, so just one. All right. So then all the coding type of people need to transport a part of what I'm going to tell you to their content people. And do we have actual designers here? As in, I don't do coding, I do Photoshop and CSS maybe? Or is CSS considered coding nowadays? I guess so. Okay, so mostly developers. Well, we need to cope with that. So again, designing content types. As I said, design, is it really design, or is it maybe about creating content types? And is content type actually the same as a node type? Or is it maybe planning content types? So we'll try to find out. Back in the days, creating content for a website was easy. It was like in the 50s or 60s when you had a roadside cafe. You had this, beautiful signs at your diner, and then, people came there to eat because, I'm hungry. Oh, there, eat here. So they would stop and eat. And then you would have a cafe maybe on the other side of the road. So, well, okay, we have the better sandwiches. Fair enough. Oh, eat there. No, let's eat here because they have the better sandwiches. So there was a time when creating content was like, if you had the blink tag enough, people would watch and would look at your website. Then came Google, and it all changed a little because the relevance became more important over time. So the whole focus when it comes to creating content shifted a bit from being either boring or completely over the top to trying to address the audience, which first of all means that you need to understand who your audience is, what's your target group, and then you need to somehow get them engaged with your content. So it comes more and more into terms of storytelling. I mean, storytelling is also one of those buzzwords, and then we have this whole topic of content commerce, where you are no longer only selling stuff, but you are selling things through meaningful content. So what you should do is actually not just try to push a box out somewhere, but need to look at the content. So think about the content that you need to deliver, or that you want to deliver first. just don't, when it's about the NEOS website, don't go ahead and say, well, we need a design, and then we'll think about some stuff that we put in there. We need texts to fill the beautifully designed pages. Do it the other way around. Think about the content first. Really, really, really. And if you are the developer kind of people that get tasked with creating some node types that implement this design, try to ask the people that give you that task, is that really something that has been planned? Or is it just a design that looks nice? Because in the end, you will be the ones that need to adjust the node types again and again during the process when the editors realize that the node types they have don't fit what they need to create the content they should be creating. Or, I've seen that a few times, they create kind of complex content using the built-in types that are there because that's the only thing that ever someone thought about. And then you need to be the one that somehow cleans the mess up in the end. So think about the content first. Now there's a few tools in the content strategy community that have been developed over time. And with tool, I don't mean like Word or Excel, but kind of concepts. The first thing is something called content inventory. It's not really about sorting your tea bags by color, obviously. And it's obviously mostly useful if you already have a website, because you cannot do an inventory of something you don't have. But if you have a content inventory, or if you have a website and you need to do a content inventory, what you do is you collect data about every single page in your website. Does that sound tedious? Did anyone ever do a content inventory? Was it tedious? Or was it a piece of cake? Was it fun to do? No. What did it involve? It probably involved spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheets. Yeah, Excel. Of course, there are tools you can use some kind of spidering software that crawls your website and collects data. There are even specialized tools coming from the search engine optimization realm of tooling that can actually do more than just collect the stuff that is there. Because the content inventory, what you need is a spreadsheet that has basic data about your web page. So no laser, whatever. We have a navigation title. They have obviously the URL. Then you have stuff that's maybe in the page, like the keywords and the description that are embedded in the page. You can collect that automatically, obviously. Then there's stuff that you can calculate, like the inverse document frequency of certain keywords that you want to focus on. So your product names or the industry that you are in or whatever. And then there's stuff that you need to add manually to all these lines in your spreadsheet. And that's like, okay, so what's the overall topic this page is? What kind of page is that? Is that a product description? Is that just some page? Is that maybe a blog article? Is that something that is relevant for legal reasons? There's a ton of things depending on your actual company and the project at hand that needs to be put in there, and that's a lot of work, and you do it manually, mostly. So, but once you have that, you can do a content audit. So you probably also did a content audit if you did an inventory, because why would you else do an inventory? The content audit helps you to actually judge the pages and the content that you have. Is that really relevant? Is that needed? Is that the right kind of thing? And it can go on to answering or asking and maybe answering questions like, do we need more of that content or do we need less of that content? If you have metrics from, I don't know, Google, analytics, or whatever, any kind of tool that you can correlate with your content inventory, you can even find out, do people like that or don't they? So, because if you invest a lot of time in writing cool articles that no one reads, maybe switch to writing something else. So that's the content audit. And they call it the only way to fully understand the structure and quality of your site. And that's true because as soon as you have more than 10 pages in a website, you lose overview, at least I do. So if you really want to know what do we have, where do we have something about that already, in what section should I put something new, that's really helpful to have, and the audit helps you understand that. There are various forms of that. You can do a full content audit, like look at everything, or you can take, I don't know, the top level pages or the 10 most viewed pages. That obviously brings down the amount of work a little. So the next thing would be something called content mapping. There are probably also other terms for that, but I like content mapping because you map content onto something. And in this case, you map it onto what your target group, your visitors, your users actually need. So the first thing is you do some research on your audience. You try to find out who is it that we want to read our website, right? Who is it that we want to sell our goods to or our services? And then you might find out, okay, that's predominantly female, between 20 and 30, low income, living in rural areas. Or you find out it's high-tech loving males over 95 years that are strong left-wing in their political views, or whatever. Well, that's important to find out. And then the next step, and it's even more important, is what do these people, these actual humans that you want to read your website, what goals do they have? When they come to your website, do they want to be entertained? Do they want to know if they can trust you? Do they look for information, specific information on the products and services you offer? So what is it that they want to achieve when they come to your website? Because if they mostly want to find out specific things about your products, and you start out by telling them in a really you had some consultant and they told you storytelling is the way to go. So now you tell a lot about the history of your company and how cool you handle your employees and that everyone's so nice. But the actual specifics about the products are somewhere hidden in the website. That's actually counterproductive to what the people that visit your website want to achieve. They want to know the specifics about the product. They don't care about the environment and your employees and the history of your company. It might be the other way around. You might find out that they want to see if they can trust you. So as soon as you know what the people actually want to achieve when they come to your website, you can find out what content do you need to make that possible. So, okay, product specifics. Let's have a product catalog. Let's have very detailed product descriptions, technical data, whatever. If they want to know if they can trust you, maybe, have an extensive section with case studies, reference customers, people that bought our services said we are awesome, that kind of thing. So that helps you actually find out what stuff do you need. So this you can do that in a variety of ways. You can draw it on a flip chart. You can do kind of some graphs in OmniGraffle or whatever tool. It really doesn't matter. The point is you need to find out what kind of content do you need. So when you know that, you can go one step further and create something that's I came to know it under the term of content template. Others call it content spec sheet. It's the same thing, basically. There are a few names for it. And it serves kind of as a blueprint for designing or for planning the content types that you need. And it also helps the editors later on in the process of actually producing content. Because what such a content template or spec sheet does is you can do that just in a text document. It flashes out the details of a content type. So let's say you found out that you need to have these case studies. Then you could create such a document and say, okay, case study pages have the following fields. Not field as in technical, but field as in something that we need to put in there so it makes sense. So what is the client that this case study is about? What was the project? When did it happen, maybe? What was the amount of work it took? And then a description, obviously. Maybe some screenshots, whatever. Stuff that you need to put in there. That's kind of the technical side of this template. And then when it comes to helping the editors, think about how that content should be put into that template. So if you are actually imagining you are an editor, or you need to tell some copywriter, okay, now please write this case study, then you can give them the raw details, obviously, but then they need to write about it. And how do they need to write about it? In what kind of emotional style? What things are important and should always be mentioned in the text? How do you address the audience? These are things that are helpful there, as well as technical things like, okay, please don't make the title longer than 70 characters because there might be a reason. But just note that down as well, because then the editors can also later on use that to make sure that they write the content that you intended to be written. That was that was a bunch of theory. So what did we do so far? We looked at the existing content maybe, and then we looked at what people do we need to address, what content do we need to do that. We fleshed out the content templates, so we know the properties of our node types. Because if you reach that point, you probably already, your fingers are itching to start writing node type YAML. So bringing the content into Neos, if you are at that point and you have these content spec sheets or content templates, is actually more or less a process of writing YAML files. So bringing content into Neos. We have this nice example, which I borrowed from slides of a colleague of mine that have been borrowed by another colleague of mine already. So this is, you've probably seen the website, or at least that QuarkHeights uses Neos. So this is a page about a kite. So this would be one of those examples for a product specification content type. So how could an editor create this page? So I see a 2-column element with a text and an image, and below I see a 4-column element with more images. And in between, maybe there's a headline. Right? I mean, you can do that just with the stock content types that Neos delivers. Who would do it like that? Yeah, okay, one's honest. No, obviously, I mean, yeah, your editors would probably just, hate you for that after the 3rd product that they need to create. So obviously, we do it a little different. We know that there is a product image and a title and a description. So that doesn't make a headline, a text, and an image element. But these are parts of one content type, of one node type, obviously. And then we have the product features. And the product features are, again, not just a content collection where we put images in, but we create actually feature node types that have a name and then this icon, because just imagine the editor has to remember the icon, maybe. I mean, you could make that text with any icon element, and then, no, you don't want that. So this is what you do. You create a node type that does that. That you know this already from your spec sheet. So you don't even need to look at the design. There isn't any design yet, but you know that you have the features and the title and the image. And then there's more. So you actually do that as a node type, and you have this kite node type, and this kite node type has title and and Beschreibung and Produktbild, as the Germans say. And then it has a content collection for the features. In there are features, and it has maybe more content collections, and you can connect to other nodes, whatever. So that's the technical side of things. But it's really easy because you just type down your content template, more or less. Yeah, I guess that's really it. It's just a node type. So maybe, try to make it modular. If you have something that you use multiple times, I don't know the CoreKites project in detail, but I would imagine that these features, the 3 strut frame and the speed valve and the, I don't know, I don't do kiteboarding, all these fancy features are probably also used elsewhere on the website. I guess there is a description for what each of these things actually is. So why is it cool to have a speed valve? So is it better than the kite that I still have from back in the 80s? So I can probably look at a features overview on the website, and I guess that the features themselves are not only a name and an icon, as we have seen in the kite page, but they have a description and some details to them that are just not displayed there, but we can display them elsewhere. So, think about reusing stuff at this point. So, and then, now we are at the point where it comes to the actual design, as in, how does it look? Until now, we only had what is it and what does it do, and why do we need it in the first place. So now we come to the point of how does it look. As with content first, I don't have to tell you that mobile first, you don't do desktop graphics. Anyone that had a project in the last half year where they implemented a design and then the customer said, oh, we need a mobile version? Only one? 2. Yeah, I know that one. That's good. That's actually awesome. I guess last year we had this topic somehow, and everyone said, yeah, we know that. People do this. We always need to add the mobile version later because the customer realizes when the project is half done. So obviously things get better. You probably know that in NEOS you don't have any limits when it comes to the design. So this is not something that's, somehow relevant. Of course, you need to maybe look a little bit at the way JavaScript is included, and you don't want to have a conflicting jQuery version than the one that is already loaded in the backend. And maybe you want to have an eye on the styling that you do. I have seen websites where the NEOS user interface had the font of the customer website. So, it's not really bad, but it was, that agency really went far. They even adjusted the NEOS UI to the customer's style. But it wasn't even on purpose. It was just, an accident. But it happens. So, of course, there are things where you can maybe interact with NEOS in a bad way, or NEOS, breaks things. But in general, you're free to do whatever you like in your design, which is good. So you can do whatever. But maybe if you talk to your designers in the company at some point during the kickoff for your next project, make them aware of the fact that the editors sometimes need a different presentation of the content than the website visitors. One very simple example is images. So I guess there's a gazillion template files out there that have a condition on some image property in some node type. And if there's no image assigned, well, you don't want to render the image tag. Fair enough. So there's just no image. In a lot of cases, that is an okay fallback for the website visitor. But then there are a lot of cases where this is not very helpful for the editor, because the editor then has no chance to see that there actually should be an image. So there's probably also a gazillion templates out there that already do a check on, is this currently being rendered for the front end, for the visitor on the web, or is it rendered for the editor in Neos? And then we insert a dummy image. But obviously, this concept can be taken further, and you can do that for a lot of other properties. You could even have properties displayed that are usually not shown to help the editor, see the context of something. You could make things inline editable that are usually not shown, but it might be more convenient to inline edit than to edit in the inspector. You're free to do that, so don't be afraid of creating maybe even a second template specifically for your editors, because that can make the editor's life a lot easier. And in the end, your customer will probably be very happy and thankful that you did that. So that's kind of templating for editors. Think about that. Then there is this idea, Christian, my dear colleague, started creating some prototyping code for that to bring the help texts from the spec sheet, from the content template, into the editing interface for the editor as well. That is something that you could obviously also do through a custom template. You could, it's kind of a hack, but you could put those things into you could put them into the help texts for nodes that we have, and there should be a way to somehow access that in the template. I didn't try it. It just, that was a thought I had the last days. Could be one option. So think about the editor, really. Then, when it comes to actually starting out with website content, it's always nice, or let's put it the other way. Who had a project that had its launch pushed back because the content wasn't done? Okay, yeah, finally something that I expected. So a lot, okay. Who had a project pushed back because the design wasn't done? Okay, 3, 4, 5 maybe. A lot less. So obviously, putting the content into the system is a problem. And I guess that in a lot of cases, that is a result of, or maybe in 50% of the cases where actually the content wasn't done, that was caused by the design being late in the beginning, but no one realizes it, could be. Because in most projects so far that I've seen, and I guess that's still the truth, there's this, we do all the implementation and we do the design, and then we, if that is accepted by the customer, then we put that onto some server, and then then the editors can start editing the content. So why is that? Why should the editors wait for the design to be done to be able to input content? Because we do content first, and we have the content templates and the spec sheets, and we have all that ready. So what's the point about waiting? There is hardly any. Of course, it is more fun to edit in the final look of things. At least that's the case for me. When I started working with Neos, it's been a few years now, but it was really like, this is actually so much fun writing texts for the website, because it's not this form anymore. Which, of course, is a complete contradiction to the services that were mentioned in the earlier talk, Contentful, Prismic, Gather Content, because they, rendering? How does this look? That's none of our business. We do forms. So it's actually back it's completely a complete move away from this. But exactly this is the point that makes it possible to edit the content as soon as you know the structure, because the design is a different story. It's a different aspect of the whole thing. So basically, in Neos, you have two ways of doing, or you have a No, you have, this is actually the same thing from two sides. We have something called the raw content mode. What it does is it strips away the styling, more or less. So you don't have any of your styles. It linearizes multi-column elements and puts the stuff below each other. So you just have, one stream of content. And that is available as soon as you have a site. So when you kickstart a site package, you have this really, 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 really basic, boring, ugly template for the front end. And when you then switch to raw content mode, it actually gets better in terms of looks. And if you combine that with very, very simple templates for your content, because obviously you need some kind of template to display your custom node types, then you can go a long way, and then the editors can start filling the website with content. You can actually create all the pages, create you can add all the kites, and you can add all the features, you can type in all the descriptions, and maybe some designer changes one icon against the other later on, but that's not your business, because you do the content, and that's not the look. So don't be afraid to create templates like this. Maybe add some content editable view helpers and do some more magic, and maybe assign a class or something. But really do the simplest template possible when you implement a node type. Just barely enough to make the content type, the node type, usable in the backend, so you can input stuff and see the data that is attached. Because as soon as you've done that, you can go to raw edit mode and can have people edit content. And you can then give that template to your designer, even to a designer that hasn't done Neos in the past, and they can work on this template. We've done that in the very, very first big Neos project we've done in 2013 with a designer that naturally had never worked with Neos, and it took him a day to feel comfortable enough so that he said, well, no problem, just send me the template, I can do that, I can style that. In the easiest case, it's just two simple rules. Tags that you don't know, like F4, leave them alone. And the things in curly brackets, don't touch. These are two simple rules, and then any designer, front-end engineer, HTML wizard can do that. They can take your templates and make them beautiful. So that was quite fast, because the next slide says questions. But I guess we can discuss a few things, because there were a few grinning about the template here in the front I've seen. And maybe there are questions, tons of questions, or ideas, or experiences from your own projects that make you think, well, this is all nice, but it's never going to work with my clients because whatever.
One of the grinning people.
It's just a closing tag was missed. No, about a raw content mode, delete.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's HTML3, actually.
Yeah.
So.
I know. No, we have good experience with that, with the raw content mode, that people start filling content. And I won't just have to say it's even much easier to make all the front-end stuff if you have really content on the website, because you know how long the text will be, how bad the image will be, how awful the headlines, much too long. So it's much easier to handle that, because my experience is the UX designer take always the best approach. The buttons text is really short, the headlines are really short, the text is perfect to the image, but it's never the real world case. So the raw content mode is a big help with that, and it's also cool because the people get the very first access to Neos, and they grow with the web page, so they're much more involved in this kind, and not just the H&D do this stuff. It's more like really a team. And I think it's a really big chance also for the client to grow with NEOS with a whole website project. So that's our experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen kind of both views on it. Sometimes if there's really no design, people seem to be kind of slow in creating content. That's probably mostly the case when there's no clear specification of what do you need to write. If it's more like, okay, we need to fill pages, then people need to have some visual clue on how much do I need to write to make it look good, for example. And then on the other side, of course, you solve a lot of problems, as you said. Like, if you have a Photoshop document and you have a text and an image, the text will always be just as long as the image. It will never be way shorter or way longer, but your editors don't do that. So you will have these images, kind of, the text will flow around and everything will look bad suddenly. So that's certainly an advantage as well.
Yeah, we have the experience that if you start with raw content mode and you want to have multi-column somewhere later, editors get confused if they have one below each other. So what is your suggestion to do that? Would it be wise for the raw mode to modify it so we have already, let's say, 2-column layout, but without layout, just the structure?
Yeah, well, of course, in raw mode, you don't really see that things are next to each other. But I think this is a specific case. You say we want to have things in multiple columns later. The first question would be why? Because it looks good, or because there's some, meaning to it. Because if there's meaning to it, you could maybe make this a specific content type that, if there's meaning to things being next to each other, it's probably not just columns, but it is something that you can map out in a specific content type, and then you can render it as columns, and then editors can know that. You can tell them, or you can write it in the spec sheet. This will be rendered as 4 columns. When there's enough space would be probably the next thing, because what happens to these columns that you need to have when people go and view that on a mobile device? Do they get shifted underneath each other?
Yeah, they get shifted.
What they see in raw content mode is more or less the mobile view.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is confusing.
But they need the other view. Normally, we always get the feedback. Oh, but I cannot imagine how this will look like. So I need more the result I will have in the end. So either give them the final layout really ready, so they don't start discussing about colors and size of headlines and all that stuff, or stay in raw mode. Sounds great to me, but I think the structure is important to them.
Yeah. Well, what you can do in addition to the raw mode, as long as you don't have the design finalized, because then they could just check in the front end or in the regular editing mode. You could create a preview mode that strips away most of the design, but still does the multi-column things as expected. That would be one option. I mean, I guess there is not the solution to this, because yes, it is confusing, and there's hardly a way around that, I guess. You need to find a way that matches your project at hand. So if you really need, if the people want to see this as columns, then give them an a preview mode in addition to the raw content mode, or modify the raw content mode. That's fine. I wouldn't say that's a bad idea necessarily. Or maybe you can structure the content in a way that makes it clear that it's not as important how this will look, because the meaning is important. And yeah, we render this as 4 columns later, but that's not really a problem for you to solve now.
Yeah, thanks.
In the back. Next up would be someone from there, maybe Bastian, and then we go to the front again, so across. So Sasha has to walk more.
Sounds good, yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to share an experience. I'm working with a customer right now that is producing a very big website that displays a lot of products. So for them, it's the first priority to display those products. They are not so much about the design, but about the displaying their content. And the process was that they created wireframes that lay out all the stuff they need to see on the website. And the customer I work with, they had a very big bottleneck at the design part because they just didn't have the resources to do that. But the implementation had to start. So the only decision that was made is, okay, we have those wireframes, they show everything necessary, and we will use Bootstrap for doing the CSS. So what we did is create a basic Bootstrap template and created all the content types based on the wireframe. Everything looked ugly in a way, but I mean, you could see that all the information was there, and you could very easily add content, and even the end customer understood how it works, and they could add content. Even if they understood, okay, it's ugly, but it will be nice in the end. So they could add all the content, and then the design was applied at a later stage, and it was just a matter of adjusting the CSS and changing a few tags and classes in the templates. So that is a pretty nice way to work with it, if you have to.
Yeah, and if you can actually, I mean, that is obviously one key to working like this, that you can convince the customer that it will work out, and that the customer accepts and understands that this transition from the ugly duckling to the swan will happen, and that it will not, be impossible later on. So, but that's, the customer needs to trust you anyway already. So, more. Oh, really?
Of course.
I just wanted to make Sasha walk over here. Thanks. No, I wondered, what are your thoughts on, or did you have any experience with connecting node types to some semantic schema, so like schema.org or something, so that it doesn't only get meaning to the customer, but even in a broader sense?
To the real meaning. Well, okay. Obviously, if that's actually a good idea, and if you do, or if you want to do, semantic web, schema.org, whatever, it is very helpful to at least think about that in the very beginning. When you're at the point of identifying the types of content that you need, that would be the right point in time to see if there is something on schema.org that matches. So, oh yeah, my product descriptions, there's probably something on schema.org, or my event dates, or whatever. So there is a schema. I don't know, there are hundreds of items on schema.org last time I looked, so it's really impressive. So match that, make a speed dating in the beginning. That's a good idea. And from then on, it's more or less keeping an eye on that match, because if there's certain properties in that schema, the thing about schema.org is, and the schemas that are there, that people have thought about that for a while, so it probably makes sense. So if you identify something that you need, and there's something on schema.org, you might also just steal the properties that they have and say, okay, we also use that. And then later on, match that in your node type. If there are properties needed that you don't need to see on the website, but they are still important for the schema, maybe make them accessible to the editors. And then it's just an implementation detail to actually make those things available, those properties and data available in the template. But yeah, that's a good point about matching that in the beginning. Someone else from the back, maybe, now that Sasha is here again?
That's it.
Okay. You're done.
Are there any questions or remarks or something? So I would say we enjoy our 20-minute break.
I thought you wanted to say, no, okay.
Just kidding.
So have a longer break. Share your thoughts. I mean, if you have any other questions, ideas, remarks, or whatever about this later on, let me know. This is how you can reach me. I'm also on Slack and wherever.
Thanks
So
again
let me know.
to Karsten. Yeah.